Chapter 882. Faced with Pang Yuan's ferocious expression, Shangguanmai shook her head and revealed a puzzled expression. Imperial concubine Jejie, you've really misunderstood me. I really didn't know that the Empress Dowager had kept foxes. Moreover, when the Empress Dowager was young, I wasn't even born yet. Even elder sister was the same. Neither of us were born yet, so how could we know about the Empress Dowager's youth? In addition, there are new people entering the palace every year, so it's even more impossible for them to remember what happened in the palace, let alone something that happened decades ago. The expression on Shangguanmai's face did not seem to be fake. Huashin Originals, domain names, please remember Pang Yuan narrowed her eyes. You really don't know? Do you really not know, or are you faking it? She asked again with uncertainty. Shangguanmai hurriedly raised her hand and swore, if elder sister doesn't believe me, I can swear to the heavens that younger sister really didn't know about the Empress Dowager keeping a fox. If younger sister is lying, let me be struck by lightning and die a horrible death. Seeing her make such a vicious oath, Pang Yuan reluctantly believed her, and her expression softened a little. Shangguanmai saw that her expression had softened and heaved a sigh of relief. She had long known that Pang Yuan had a bad temper and was very spoiled. However, she had rarely interacted with her in the past, let alone offending her. If not for the special period, she would not have bothered to deal with such a person. However, he didn't expect that she wasn't just spoiled. It was obvious that she didn't care about the consequences when she was angry. The kind that wanted to put you to death. Big sister, the fox fur sable was given to you by younger sister out of kindness. Why are you bringing it up? Could it be? Seeing the suspicion and understanding on her face, Pang Yuan instantly felt that she couldn't keep her face. She glared at her fiercely and tried to defend herself. What Mai gave me is naturally the rarest treasure in this world. However, Ben Gong suddenly realized that the weather is getting cold and the Empress Dowager is older than Ben Gong, so she should need this kind of thing more. That's why I'm planning to give the fox fur sable to the Empress Dowager. This way, the Empress Dowager won't have to freeze when the weather turns cold in the future. It was a well-intentioned explanation. Shangguanmai nodded and said, it's rare for imperial concubine sister to be so filial. Even I am deeply touched. But sister, you have to believe me. I really don't know what happened to the Empress Dowager. When Pang Yuan heard that she was still explaining about the Empress Dowager, and when she started to explain, she never stopped. This made Pang Yuan instantly recall that time when the Empress Dowager slapped her in Xi'an Palace. Since young, when had she ever suffered this kind of vexation? She waved her hand impatiently. All right, I didn't say that I don't believe you. It's just that in front of Shen Yueji, Ben Gong has made such a big fool of myself. You can't absolve yourself from the blame. Those 2 slaps just now, Ben Gong didn't hurt you. You only have yourself to blame. Who told you to give Ben Gong the fox fur sable for no reason? Not only did he not get any benefits from the Empress Dowager, he ended up in a mess. www.com behind Shangguanmai, Yu was so angry that her eyes turned red. What did she mean by making such a big fool of herself? Her ladyship could not absolve herself from the blame. What did her ladyship do? It was such a good fox fur sable. Whether it was the workmanship or the color, it was of the best quality. When her ladyship first saw the fox fur sable, she fell in love with it. In the end, when Yu came and saw how much she liked the fox fur sable, her ladyship reluctantly gave it to Yu. But Yu gave it to the Empress Dowager in the blink of an eye. She wanted to please the Empress Dowager, but when she couldn't, she blamed her ladyship. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about explosively cute favorite concubine, the Prince Regent, gets into trouble, follow Yudu literature. Chapter 883. Get up, it's rare for you to have such a kind heart. What you said just now was indeed a good idea. We'll do as you said and do as you said. Not only will I send people to spread the news, but there are also many people from your charm palace. Remember to help me spread the news. Don't worry, elder sister. Elder sister doesn't need to say anything. Younger sister will help elder sister do it. It's getting late, so this consort is going back. Have your maidservant get some ice cubes to apply to your face so that the swelling doesn't go down. If others see it, they'll think that this consort is bullying you again. Yes. Zhengyang Palace Shen Yueji was bathing when Wu Jiaoyi asked to see her. Enrich originally wanted her to go back first and inform her when her master was done bathing. Who knew that Wu Jiaoyi would directly refuse, saying that she would wait here. Seeing that her expression was strange and anxious, Enrich thought that she must have something to inform her master. After some thought, he went to tell Double Happiness. She brought the fragrant dew over. After hearing Enrich's words, he paused and smiled. Enrich, young miss said that this Wu Jiaoyi is a good person to make friends with. She's not a bad person, so you don't need to be so wary of her. Since she came to find young miss, she must have something to tell young miss. Let her wait in the main hall. When young miss is done bathing, she will go see her. Hearing Shuangshi's words, Enrich no longer hesitated and said respectfully, yes. Miss, Wu Jiaoyi is here. Wu Jiaoyi? In the bath, hearing Wu Jiaoyi's name, Shen Yueji smiled. What is she doing here? Are you here to bring me food again? From Xianqing's words, it doesn't seem like it. Xianqing said that she was in a hurry to see you, miss. There must be something she wanted to tell you. Oh. Shen Yueji narrowed her eyes and stretched out her hand. Shuangshi's eyes and hands were sharp, so he quickly brought her some clean clothes. After dressing herself up, Shen Yueji left the side hall. Wu Jiaoyi was sitting on a round chair at the side. When she saw her, she quickly got up and greeted, Shen young lady. Do you have something to tell me? Yes. Wu Jiaoyi's demeanor was respectful, not the slightest bit as overbearing as she was in the imperial garden. Now, she was tactfully like a well-educated and well-mannered young lady, without the slightest bit of pampering and barbarism. Shen Yueji increasingly felt that Wu Jiaoyi was someone worth befriending. Wu Jiaoyi looked at her worriedly. Miss Shen, haven't you heard? Heard what? There are many rumors about Miss Shen in the imperial harem. Did Miss Shen go to Xi'an Palace to see the Empress Dowager yesterday? Shen Yueji didn't deny it. She nodded and sat on the round chair opposite her. I did. What about it? Then about the Empress Dowager suddenly fainting, Wu Jiaoyi hesitated. She didn't know how to tell her. When she met Shen Yueji's gaze, she became even more worried. Everyone in the palace said that Miss Shen went to Xi'an Palace yesterday to please the Empress Dowager. She gave the Empress Dowager a fox fur sable. As a result, she was slapped by the Empress Dowager and fainted from anger. Because His Majesty currently likes Shen young lady, the Empress Dowager was afraid that if His Majesty knew of this matter, it would be difficult on both sides, so she kept it from His Majesty. Nonsense. Without waiting for Shen Yueji to speak, Shuangshi first reprimanded her angrily. Wu Jiaoyi was shocked. As a Jiaoyi, she was full of respect for Shuangshi's maidservant because she was Shen Yueji's person. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about exploding cute pet concubine, Prince Regent, gets into trouble, follow Yudu Literature on WeChat. Chat about life, find a bosom friend Tilda. Chapter 884. The worry on her face increased. I believe that Shen young lady is not a person who fawns on the rich and powerful. So, after hearing the rumors, I quickly came to tell Miss Shen so that you can be prepared. I don't know about the rumors in the harem, to be honest with Wu Jiaoyi. Now that they know I'm favored, they won't gossip in front of me. As for the fox fur, she smiled, I already know who wants to frame me. It must be Pang Yuan. That bitch. She gnashed her teeth in anger. I have never seen such a shameless person in my life. She can even turn black into white. The fox fur sable was clearly given to the Empress Dowager by her. It was also her who made the Empress Dowager faint. She was also the one who got slapped by Empress Dowager. She, on the other hand, pushes everything onto you, miss. Does she still have any shame? Miss Shuangshi, what did you say? You said the fox fur was given to Empress Dowager by Imperial Consort Pang? Wu Jiaoyi looked at her in disbelief. What else? Shuangshi glanced at her. Does Wu Jiaoyi really think it's a gift from Miss Shen? No, Wu Jiaoyi shook her head. I know Miss Shen wouldn't do such a thing. There must be something hidden. Maybe someone is trying to frame Miss Shen, but I don't know. She didn't know that the fox fur was given to her by Imperial Consort Pang. When Pang Yuan was mentioned, the worry on Wu Jiaoi's face deepened. She was most afraid of Shangguan Mai. As for Pang Yuan, she was like a god in her heart. She didn't care about her status. But she didn't expect Imperial Consort Pang to target Shen Yueji. The Pang family's status was like the sun in the sky. Even the emperor had to respect Imperial Tutor Pang, and Empress Dowager treated him like an elder brother. If Shen Yueji was targeted by her, it made sense. Everyone in the harem knew that Imperial Consort Pang loved the emperor as much as her own life. All the beautiful women in the harem had been dealt with by Pang Yuan in private. The emperor and Empress Dowager turned a blind eye to it for her father's sake. From this, it could be seen how much Pang Yuan was doted on. Even Shangguan Mai did not dare to offend her. However, he had set his sights on Shen Yueji. Miss Shen, you have to be careful. Being targeted by concubine Pang won't do you any good. The Empress Dowager loves her so much. No matter what she does, the Empress Dowager will let her. Shen Yueji calmly took a sip of tea. If the Empress Dowager didn't care about her, she would have stood out to refute the rumor the moment the news was released. In the end, she was still as calm as Mount Tai. Until now, there hasn't been any movement from Xi'an Palace. She smiled. It seems that the Empress Dowager wants to see how I deal with the rumors in the harem. Miss Shen, Wu Jiaoi looked at her worriedly. Is Miss Shen all right? Wu Jiaoi, don't worry. My lady is fine. This Pang Yuan has done countless things to my young miss in secret. In the end, she reaped what she sowed. Now, it's merely some rumors that aren't worth mentioning. What's there to take to heart? That's true. Wu Jiaoi was still worried. But how can a woman's reputation be ruined like this? Miss Shen, you, Wu Jiaoi, you have to remember that people live for themselves. As for their reputation, if you don't care about it, why should you care about others? Those who don't like you, no matter how well you live and how good your reputation is, they won't like you. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about super cute favorite concubine, the Prince Regent, gets into trouble, follow You Read Literature. Chapter 885. Those who truly treat you well, no matter how bad your reputation is, or how evil you are, will still be willing to be close to you. Wu Jiaoi raised her head and looked at her. Are you talking about me, Miss Shen? Shen Yueji smiled. If that's what Wu Jiaoi thinks, then so be it. Miss Shen is right. I value other people's opinions of me too much. That's why, later on, after listening to her words, she executed that woman. Not only did the people in the harem change their opinion of her, but even she became much more indifferent, and her state of mind became much more relaxed. The person who always schemed against her was finally dead. In this way, she did not need to be on guard against her every day. Shen Yueji's state of mind was something she should learn from. Miss Shen, what do you plan to do? Shen Yueji was about to speak. Concubine Mai has arrived. Shangguan Mai? Hearing the report from outside, Wu Jiaoi could no longer sit still. She stood up abruptly because she had dealt with that woman without permission. She knew that Shangguan Mai would not forget her so quickly and would definitely think of ways to deal with her, but suddenly, she calmed down. She did not know if it was because of Shen Yueji's gaze. She was just an insignificant Jiaoi. As for Shen Yueji, she was still sitting there unscathed. Now that Shangguan Mai has set her sights on me, she won't do anything to you. That woman is just a pawn she's using. If I hadn't appeared in the North Underworld's harem, perhaps she would be willing to play this game of cat and mouse with you. But now that I'm here, it's obvious that she won't set her sights on you. Miss Shen, concubine Mai is not someone to be trifled with. You must be careful. Shangguan Mai was the type of person who hid a dagger behind a smile. Now, Wu Jiaoi was even more worried. Shen Yueji had offended the two most difficult people to offend in the palace. If they joined hands to deal with Shen Yueji, what would she do? Even if she had the Emperor's protection, but in the imperial family, the Emperor's favor was just a flash in the pan. What she was worried about was that the Emperor doted on her now, but it didn't mean that he would protect her in the future. In addition, Grand Tutor Pang and Shangguan Mai's fathers were all useful people in the imperial court. They were loyal to the Northern Dark Kingdom and had made countless contributions. Her worries were not without reason. Regarding Shen Yueji's identity, she only began to inquire about it after Shen Yueji helped her. She knew that she was an imperial concubine of Feng Country and the beloved daughter of Feng Country's first-rank general, Shen He. However, this was the northern underworld, not her Feng Country. Just as she was worrying, Shangguan Mai also came in. Perhaps because she did not see her, Shangguan Mai stared at her for a while and barely remembered who she was. I heard from the people in the palace that in order to protect Wu Jiaoyi, Miss Shen did not hesitate to instigate her to hurt someone important to me. Shen Yueji smiled, but she did not get up. I didn't know it was someone important to Concubine Mai. I hope Concubine Mai won't blame me. What are you saying, Miss Shen? This consort knows that Miss Shen isn't an unreasonable person. Since you've injured her, that means that woman deserves to die. Since she made Miss Shen unhappy, it's fine to teach her a lesson. If you want to talk about super cute favorite concubine, the Prince Regent, gets into trouble with more like-minded people, follow Yudu literature on WeChat. Talk about life and find a bosom friend Tilda. Chapter 886. Those who truly treat you well, no matter how bad your reputation is, or how evil you are, will still be willing to be close to you. Wu Jiaoyi raised her head and looked at her. Are you talking about me, Miss Shen? Shen Yueji smiled. If Wu Jiaoyi thinks so, then so be it. Miss Shen is right. I value other people's opinion of me too much. That's why, later on, after listening to her words, she executed that woman. Not only did the people in the harem change their opinion of her, but even she became much more relaxed. The person who always schemed against her was finally dead. In this way, she did not need to be on guard against her every day. Shen Yueji's state of mind was something she should learn from. Miss Shen, what do you plan to do? Shen Yueji was about to speak. Concubine Mai has arrived, Shangguan Mai? Hearing the report from outside, Wu Jiaoyi could no longer sit still. She stood up abruptly because she had dealt with that woman without permission. She knew that Shangguan Mai would not forget her so quickly and would definitely think of ways to deal with her, but suddenly, she calmed down. She did not know if it was because of Shen Yueji's gaze. She was just an insignificant Jiaoyi. As for Shen Yueji, she was still sitting there unscathed. Now that Shangguan Mai has set her sights on me, she won't do anything to you. That woman is just a pawn she's using. If I hadn't appeared in the North Underworld's harem, perhaps she would be willing to play this game of cat and mouse with you. But now that I'm here, it's obvious that she won't set her sights on you. Miss Shen, Concubine Mai is not someone to be trifled with. You must be careful. Shangguan Mai was the type of person who hid a dagger behind a smile. Now, Wu Jiaoyi was even more worried. Shen Yueji had offended the two most difficult people to offend in the palace. If they joined hands to deal with Shen Yueji, what would she do? Even if she had the Emperor's protection, but in the imperial family, the Emperor's favor was just a flash in the pan. What she was worried about was that the Emperor doted on her now, but it didn't mean that he would protect her in the future. In addition, Grand Tutor Pang and Shangguan Mai's fathers were all useful people in the imperial court. They were loyal to the Northern Dark Kingdom and had made countless contributions. Her worries were not without reason. Regarding Shen Yueji's identity, she only began to inquire about it after Shen Yueji helped her. She knew that she was an imperial concubine of Feng Country and the beloved daughter of Feng Country's first-rank general, Shen He. However, this was the northern underworld, not her Feng Country. Just as she was worrying, Shangguan Mai also came in. Perhaps because she did not see her, Shangguan Mai stared at her for a while and barely remembered who she was. I heard from the people in the palace that in order to protect Wu Jiaoyi, Miss Shen did not hesitate to instigate her to hurt someone important to me. Shen Yueji smiled, but she did not get up. I didn't know it was someone important to Concubine Mai. I hope Concubine Mai won't blame me. What are you saying, Miss Shen? This consort knows that Miss Shen isn't an unreasonable person. Since you've injured her, that means that woman deserves to die. Since she made Miss Shen unhappy, it's fine to teach her a lesson. If you want to talk about super cute favorite concubine, the Prince Regent, gets into trouble with more like-minded people, follow Udu literature on WeChat. Talk about life and find a bosom friend Tilda. The shock in her heart was far greater than the expression on her face. Shangguan Mai's straight and stiff back did not come back to her senses for a long time. Even her footsteps, which were about to leave, were completely frozen, as if they were rooted to the ground. For a long time. She wanted to speak, but did not know how to defend herself. Because the things that she had plotted in her heart were so mercilessly exposed by Shen Yueji, including her schemes and the fact that she deliberately framed Pang Yuan. Even Pang Yuan could not figure it out, but to Shen Yueji, it was just a look, a subtle movement. She wanted to chat with more like-minded people about explosively cute pet concubine, the Prince Regent, getting into trouble. Chat about life, find a bosom friend Tilda. Chapter 888. Perhaps, she didn't even need to observe. When she heard about the rumor, she already suspected her. All this time, she couldn't see through this woman. The only thing she could see through was her temperament. She was so calm like the wind and had everything in her hands. She had never seen the slightest bit of panic on her face. It was only at this moment that Shangguan Mai realized that her self-righteous schemes and self-righteous instigation were like clowns in her eyes. In her eyes, she had long seen through everything clearly and thoroughly. Yu saw her concubine lose her composure. This was the first time she saw her concubine lose her composure since she entered the palace and served her concubine for so many years. It's better to have a friend than an enemy. But in my eyes, I'd rather have an enemy. Friends will only hurt me, and I'll feel sad. If it's an enemy, I'll only be happy when the enemy dies. I won't have so many worries. People with different beliefs can't make plans together. Perhaps concubine Mai and I are only suited to be friends. Shen Yueji, don't you think you're being a little too arrogant? Shangguan Mai turned around and looked at her. There was still a faint smile on her lips, but at this moment, there was a layer of danger in that smile. No matter how high your status in the Feng Nation is, you should know what kind of place it is now that you're in the northern underworld. Imperial concubine Pang's paternal family's backer is the Grand Tutor of the nation. He has a high position and all the officials in the imperial court listen to him. My father is a first-grade prime minister in the imperial court. He's also highly regarded by the officials and the people of the capital. No matter which one of us wants to deal with you, it would be as easy as flipping our hands. You should know how long the emperor's favor will last. Perhaps the emperor treats you differently, but if it's you or the country, who do you think the emperor will choose? Who do you think I'll choose? The man's deep and dignified voice came from outside the palace. Shangguan Mai looked up when she heard the voice. What she saw was a man dressed in a black robe, his tall and straight figure slowly walking towards her. The man's handsome facial features were natural and beautiful. Every part of his face was so exquisite that there was not the slightest flaw. Such a perfect man had such a high status. He was the ruler of the northern underworld. Which woman in the imperial harem didn't like? This was their man. In the future, she would have to rely on men, including herself, Shangguan Mai. Shangguan Mai quickly knelt down in front of him. Your Majesty. As for Mo Wushang, he didn't even look at her. He walked past her and stood in front of Shen Yueji. He grabbed her hand and hugged her. Why are there so many people here? The emperor frowned. It seemed that other women had come to Xingyang Palace, which made him unhappy. Shen Yueji was amused. She smoothed his furrowed brows. One is a friend who came to remind me, and the other is a future enemy who came to incite me. After listening to her quietly, the man looked at Shangguan Mai coldly. Shangguan Mai knelt on the ground. Her face was pale. Your Majesty, I feel like old friends with Miss Shen. It was out of kindness. Imperial concubine Pang was blamed by the Empress Dowager for giving the fox fur sable to the Empress Dowager. Imperial concubine Pang blamed Miss Shen for it. If you want to talk about super cute favorite concubine, Prince Regent, gets into trouble with more like-minded people, follow Udu literature on WeChat. Talk about life and find friends. Tilda. Chapter 889. Now, there are rumors about Miss Shun in the harem. Miss Shun is going to be the empress of the northern underworld in the future. If your reputation is ruined because of this, I'm afraid it won't be good for Miss Shun. I didn't expect that Miss Shun would misunderstand me and think that I, an imperial consort Pang, have joined hands to frame her. So I was angry and said those words. I hope Your Majesty can forgive me. A moment of anger. Mo Wushang narrowed his eyes slightly, and his gaze fell on her like a dagger. Just this gaze alone made Shangguan Mai not dare to look at him directly. Although she was a second-ranked Mai Fei in the inner palace, had a powerful family background, and was much better at scheming than Pang Yuan, the total number of times she had seen the emperor, including since she entered the palace, was no more than 3 times. The emperor's excellence made her fall in love with him at first sight. But what if I kill you in a moment of anger? The emperor? The man's cold and heartless words scared Shangguan Mai so much that her face turned pale. She fell to the ground powerlessly and looked at him in disbelief. No matter what, she was still a second-rank Mai concubine, and her father was a first-rank prime minister in the court. She actually wanted to kill her for Shen Yueji? She knew that the emperor was not joking with her. His cold eyes were like countless sharp knives, piercing into her body and riddling her with holes. Your Majesty, this servant does not know what mistake her ladyship has committed. Her ladyship had good intentions and wanted to remind Miss Chen to guard against Consort Pang. Who would have thought that Miss Chen not only did not accept her ladyship's good intentions, she even encouraged her maids to speak ill of her. Your Majesty, you have to uphold justice for this servant's ladyship. Yue hurriedly knelt on the ground and cried as she explained. So what if I speak ill of you? That fox fur sable was originally deliberately given to Pang Yuan by your Nyang. If she had known earlier, she would have presented it to the Empress Dowager. Even if the Empress Dowager was angry, it was also within your Nyang's calculations. She wanted to kill 3 birds with 1 stone. I'm afraid that the one who encouraged Pang Yuan to put this dirty hat on my miss head was also your Nyang. What kind of good intentions? I see that all of you have good intentions, but you can't wait to get rid of my young miss. My young miss has never offended you, right? Don't make yourself sound so noble. You only know how to play those shameless tricks behind the scenes. Shuangxi angrily pointed at them and scolded them. She no longer cared about Mo Wushang's presence. Anyway, she wasn't afraid. Since the son-in-law liked her family's young miss so much, she, as a maidservant, would also benefit from it. Liu Yu. Emperor. It's just a small matter of bickering. If you interfere again, it will become a big matter. Didn't I say that I will handle this matter myself? You don't have to interfere. You just need to take care of your own affairs in the court. She playfully scratched the man's palm. Mo Wushang glanced sideways at her. His gaze softened and he changed the words that were on the tip of his tongue. Drag her away. 50 strokes. Emperor. Your Majesty, please spare me. Your Majesty. This servant's concubine can't take such a heavy beating. This will take her ladyship's life. Emperor, this servant is willing to take the punishment in place of the imperial concubine. Emperor, please hit this servant. Since Yu is so loyal to his master, then both master and servant shall receive 50 strokes each. Liu Yu lightly glanced at them and continued. The emperor didn't reply. There wasn't a trace of displeasure on his face. He seemed to be quite satisfied with Liu Yu's reply at this time. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about explosively cute favorite concubine, Prince Regent, gets into trouble, follow Yudu literature. Chapter 890. This time, it wasn't just Shangguan Mai, even Yu's face turned ashen. Begging for mercy was useless. They could see that the more they begged, the more the emperor would lose his patience and punish them even harder. They watched as the master and servant were dragged away to be punished. Wu Jiaoi, who was standing at the side, covered her mouth in shock. Her eyes widened. She used to think that the emperor only liked and pampered Shen Yueji. But now, just because of a few words from Shangguan Mai, The emperor disregarded the prime minister and wanted to kill Shangguan Mai? If it wasn't for Shen Yueji stopping her, Shangguan Mai would have become a cold corpse by now. The emperor's love for Shen Yueji was more than just love and affection. This was clearly love, love to the bone. For Shen Yueji, he really couldn't care less about Shangguan Mai. This reminded her of what Shangguan Mai had just said. Between Jiang Shan and Shen Yueji, who would the emperor choose? She didn't hesitate anymore. The emperor heard it. Although he didn't answer, he used his actions to prove to Shangguan Mai that he chose Shen Yueji. Because behind Shangguan Mai was half of the Dark North Kingdom. But the emperor still punished her for Shen Yueji. Because of shock and fear, Wu Jiaoyi forgot to kneel. She didn't know why she was afraid. No wonder Shen Yueji didn't panic. She knew that the emperor would protect her. Just the emperor's love for her was enough to protect her till the end. What was there to be afraid of? Why are you back so early today? Nothing important, so I came back to see you. Did you eat? I just took a bath. Why would I eat? Shen Yueji was amused. Bath? Noticing this word, the man narrowed his eyes and sized her up. Very quickly, Shen Yueji noticed the meaning of his gaze, and her little face immediately turned red. This guy, how could he not control himself? This morning, Wu Jiaoyi is here. Wu Jiaoyi didn't need the emperor's dangerous gaze to look at her. She quickly bowed and said, I just remembered that I have something to do, so I'll go back first. I'll take my leave. Initially, she had intended to use the word concubine, but she seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly changed it. There was one thing about her. She was the same as the women in the imperial harem. Who wouldn't want the emperor's favor? However, it was not exactly the same. The emperor had always been a high and mighty person. She would only take the initiative if he took a liking to her. Otherwise, she did not want to be like the 3,000 beauties in the imperial harem. She did not want to be like them, fighting for it until their heads bled and their bodies were covered in injuries. It was not because it was not worth it, but the emperor was not like an ordinary man. He could not be faithful to one woman to the end. She used to think like this, but now, after seeing Shen Yueji, especially seeing how much the emperor doted on her, she knew that she no longer had a chance. Therefore, she would rather be friends with Shen Yueji than become enemies with her for the sake of fighting for the throne. After Wu Jiaoyi left, Shuangxi playfully stuck out her tongue. Son-in-law, this servant will also take her leave. It was rare for the man to be willing to look at this little girl who had helped him a lot in Foam Country. He nodded. In the blink of an eye, the lively Zhengyang Palace suddenly became empty. When she met the man's dark eyes again, Shen Yueji subconsciously took a step back. Mo Wushang, you can't control yourself. It's still daytime. Forget about it at night, but don't even think about it during the day. If you want to talk about super cute pet concubine, the Prince Regent, gets into trouble with more like-minded people, follow Yudu literature on WeChat. Talk about life, find a bosom friend Tilda. Chapter 891. The man grabbed her and pulled her into his arms. He kissed her lips and suddenly smiled. What are you thinking about? When did I say I wanted to? Or you? Shen Yueji was speechless. The next moment, she reached out and covered the man's mouth. Don't say it. I don't want to. The rumor in the harem was that Shen Yueji had been reprimanded by the Empress Dowager in order to please the Empress Dowager. They didn't dare to spread the rumor in front of Shen Yueji. But at least in places where Shen Yueji wasn't involved, the curious ones and the concubines who hated Shen Yueji were undoubtedly fanning the flames and spreading the rumor. However, the incident with Shangguan Mai in Zhengyang Palace had caused an uproar in the harem. Although the status of the current imperial concubine Mai could not be compared to Pang Yuan, her father was still a first-rank prime minister in the imperial court. He had a high status and power in the imperial court. Usually, besides imperial tutor Pang, the second person the emperor valued was him. They didn't expect, no one dared to believe it, especially when they found out that the emperor originally wanted to kill Shangguan Mai to avenge Shen Yueji. They were so shocked that they could not close their jaws. The emperor actually loved this woman from Foam Country to this extent. He didn't even care about the prime minister. The North Underworld was in need of manpower right now. The Emperor's actions were undoubtedly a slap to the Prime Minister's face in public. Everyone was envious and jealous of this woman from Foam Country. They hadn't seen her before and had only heard rumors about her. Every single woman hated her. They had been in the palace for so long and they had all learned the best etiquette, manners, music, chess, calligraphy, and painting skills. They had waited for the Emperor for so many years in the harem, but the Emperor didn't look up to them. But this Shen Yueji, they still didn't know what was so special about her that made the Emperor fall head over heels for her. Not only the Prime Minister, but Imperial concubine Pang also didn't dare to do anything to Shen Yueji. Even Imperial concubine Pang didn't dare to touch this woman. When the Empress Dowager of Xi'an Palace heard this, she was stunned for a moment. Soon, she sighed silently. I was still thinking about whether or not I should help Ji. After all, these rumors are not good for her reputation. Wan's actions are too ruthless. In the end, she was still hesitating. Although she wanted to know how Shen Yueji would handle the matter alone, the Emperor was unwilling. He did not even give Shen Yueji a chance to do anything. With Shangguan Mai, everything was settled. Most of the women in the harem liked to focus on the Emperor. After all, he was the man they had spent their entire lives following. But Xi'an shook his head and sighed. Her son seemed to have deep feelings for Shen Yueji. For the sake of this woman, he could not even care about his most valued minister. 50 strokes of the paddle. Even a thick-skinned man would lose half his life. If it were to be done to a weak woman like Shangguan Mai, wouldn't it be the same as taking her life? Empress Dowager. She wanted to chat with more like-minded people about super cute favorite concubine, Prince Regent, getting into trouble. Talk about life, find a bosom friend Tilda. Chapter 892. Nanny Zhu, who was standing at the side, also had a worried look on her face. In any case, the Emperor's actions this time were too much. It was not wrong for him to favor Shen Yueji. No one in the palace stopped him from favoring any concubine or woman. After all, he was the Emperor. It was reasonable for an emperor to have a favorite concubine. However, he should not have treated concubine Mai like this when she had not done anything wrong. 50 strokes of the paddle. An ordinary concubine would be talked about, let alone the Prime Minister's daughter. This was, I'm afraid the Prime Minister has heard the news now. Empress Dowager, you see, Xi'an was amused and angry. He was angry that he did not care about the ministers and his reputation. As the Emperor of the North Underworld, he did not set an example and treated his own concubine like this. How could he abandon the Prime Minister? The problem was that Shangguan Mai did not do anything but was flogged 50 times. This was different from punishing her for something she had done wrong. What can I do now that she has been flogged? Alas, Shang is good at everything except this. He is like his father. How can he be a good emperor of the North Underworld if he does not care about anything? I don't think that Shen Yueji is easy to deal with. Even if Shangguan Mai is cunning, she may not be a match for Shen Yueji. He is afraid that his woman will be wronged, so he will help her settle it first. Seeing him so deeply in love, Xi'an felt gratified, but also worried about him. He liked Shen Yueji so much. She did not know how much Shen Yueji liked him. Even if it was only half, she could rest assured. Shang was the son she had given birth to after 10 months of pregnancy. He was a piece of flesh that fell from her belly and the fruit of her love with the man she loved. She naturally wanted him to be well. Order someone to go to the charming palace and send more treasures and tonics to my Fei. Also, send Ari Jia's imperial physician to diagnose my Fei as well. Yes. Empress Dowager, the Prime Minister wants to see you. At this time, a young eunuch came in from outside the hall and reported. Xi'an paused as if he had expected it. He did not look too surprised. However, a strange look flashed across his eyes, making it hard for others to notice. He nodded. Let him in. The person who came in was a middle-aged man. He was thin and had a fair complexion. Although he was already middle-aged, his demeanor and appearance were still that of a young man. He was not like other middle-aged men. When they reached middle age, their bodies would become fat. He still looked the same as when he was young, an elegant and thin young man, extraordinarily handsome. When Shangwon He came in, his eyes fell on her. He looked at her and bowed respectfully. "Your humble servant. You and I have known each other for many years. There's no need to kneel." Without waiting for him to kneel, Xian waved his hand. "Nanny Zhu, give the Prime Minister a seat." "Yes, Empress Dowager." Nanny Zhu respectfully offered her seat to Shangwon He. Shangwon He nodded and sat down. "Lord Shangwon, regarding the matter of your beloved daughter, I have only just found out about it. His Majesty's actions this time are indeed too unbecoming of a ruler. I will speak to His Majesty about this. At that time, I will ask His Majesty to give Lord Shangwon an explanation. My is obedient and sensible. She does not like to fight. After entering the palace, she has been scrupulously abiding by her duties. Your humble servant thinks that she is much better than concubine Pang, who is spoiled and arrogant. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about exploding cute pet concubine, the Prince Regent gets into trouble, follow you read literature on WeChat. Talk about life and find bosom friends Tilda. Chapter 893. The Empress Dowager nodded. "Yes. I have seen my words and actions in the palace. To be honest, she is the best candidate to be the Empress. I have considered her before. But I am only the Empress Dowager of a country, not the Emperor. I can't control the Emperor's mind. Lord Shangwon, you know that my son is like his father. No matter what, as long as it is his own decision, no one can change his mind. I've also seen the girl that your Majesty brought from Foam Country. She's quite pretty and has a good heart. I haven't spent much time with her, so I don't know her very well. But from the looks of it, she's all right. If she's not bad, why would she allow your Majesty to beat my Empress Dowager? To be frank, these 50 strokes are not even allowed on a man, let alone a weak girl like my Empress Dowager. When I went to Charming Palace to visit her, she was lying on the bed with a pale face. It was as if she would die at any time." Xian couldn't refute the man's words. "Prime Minister, I know you are very protective of your daughter. I have said that I will give you an explanation." Xian owed the man in front of him. He couldn't speak in an overbearing tone because he owed him and knew that he was angry. The man was obviously angry. Xian turned his head. "Granny Zhu, you can leave now." "Empress Dowager?" Granny Zhu looked at her worriedly. Xian waved his hand. "It's okay. You can leave. I am fine." "Yes, Empress Dowager." Nanny Zhu left worriedly. When she passed by Shangwon He, Nanny Zhu paused and looked at him. "Lord Shangwon, I have to remind you that so many years have passed. What's done cannot be undone. Many things can't go back to the past. Many people have changed. Now, the Prime Minister has married someone else, and some people are thinking about it." She didn't finish her words. She just sighed and left. "Things have already happened. The only thing I can do now is to make amends. Shangwon He, I've already told you that the Emperor's temperament is the same as the late Emperor's. I can't control him even if I want to. Since he cares so much about Ji, you can't push the blame onto her. Although I haven't known this girl for a long time, I know that she abhors evil. As long as my doesn't do anything to her, she won't stand by and watch her get beaten. Empress Dowager is still the same as when she was young, always so protective. No matter what mistake the person you want to protect has made, you will always find so many reasons and methods to explain and defend them. Shangwon He, so many years have passed, don't you understand? There is no longer any possibility between you and me." Xian's gaze finally fell on him. "From the moment you married someone else, there was no possibility between us." Shangwon He suddenly raised his head and fixed his eyes on her. So many years had passed, but for him, every day and every moment was like a kind of torture. She was not old, and neither was he. He tried his best to maintain a young appearance, but no one knew what he was expecting in his heart. At that time, it was he who met her first, and the man she loved was him. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about super cute favorite concubine, regent, get into trouble, follow You Read Literature on WeChat. Chat about life and find confidence tilde. Chapter 894. The Empress Dowager nodded. Yes. I have seen my words and actions in the palace. To be honest, she is the best candidate to be the Empress. I have considered her before. But I am only the Empress Dowager of a country, not the Emperor. I can't control the Emperor's mind. Lord Shangguan, you know that my son is like his father. No matter what, as long as it is his own decision, no one can change his mind. I've also seen the girl that your Majesty brought from Foam Country. She's quite pretty and has a good heart. I haven't spent much time with her, so I don't know her very well. But from the looks of it, she's all right. If she's not bad, why would she allow your Majesty to beat my Empress Dowager? To be frank, these 50 strokes are not even allowed on a man, let alone a weak girl like my Empress Dowager. When I went to Charming Palace to visit her, she was lying on the bed with a pale face. It was as if she would die at any time. Cian couldn't refute the man's words. Prime Minister, I know you are very protective of your daughter. I have said that I will give you an explanation. Cian owed the man in front of him. He couldn't speak in an overbearing tone because he owed him and knew that he was angry. The man was obviously angry. Cian turned his head. Granny Zhu, you can leave now. Empress Dowager? Granny Zhu looked at her worriedly. Cian waved his hand. It's okay. You can leave. I am fine. Yes, Empress Dowager. Nanny Zhu left worriedly. When she passed by Shangguan, Nanny Zhu paused and looked at him. Lord Shangguan, I have to remind you that so many years have passed. What's done cannot be undone. Many things can't go back to the past. Many people have changed. Now, the Prime Minister has married someone else, and some people are thinking about it. She didn't finish her words. She just sighed and left. Things have already happened. The only thing I can do now is to make amends. Shangguan, I've already told you that the Emperor's temperament is the same as the late Emperor's. I can't control him even if I want to. Since he cares so much about Jie, you can't push the blame onto her. Although I haven't known this girl for a long time, I know that she abhors evil. As long as my doesn't do anything to her, she won't stand by and watch her get beaten. Empress Dowager is still the same as when she was young, always so protective. No matter what mistake the person you want to protect has made, you will always find so many reasons and methods to explain and defend them. Shangguan, so many years have passed, don't you understand? There is no longer any possibility between you and me. Cian's gaze finally fell on him. From the moment you married someone else, there was no possibility between us. Shangguan suddenly raised his head and fixed his eyes on her. So many years had passed, but for him, every day and every moment was like a kind of torture. She was not old, and neither was he. He tried his best to maintain a young appearance, but no one knew what he was expecting in his heart. At that time, it was he who met her first, and the man she loved was him. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about super cute favorite concubine, regent, get into trouble, follow You Read Literature on WeChat. Chat about life and find confidence tilde. Chapter 895. It's him, it's all him, his old love. In the beginning, before she fell in love with that man, Cian would feel sad every time she saw him, especially when she saw him with other women. She would see the gentle smile on his face, which he only showed to her, fall on other women in the blink of an eye. Especially when she saw him and heard him say those gentle and lingering words of love to other women. Those were the words he had whispered into her ears before. Shangguan, you betrayed your promise to me. You lied to me. Just take it as my wishful thinking. Now, although that man is dead, I will not consider you again. This sentence was like a thorn in the man's heart. He had waited for her for so many years, but all he got was her turning back and her forgiveness. At least, she had never said so many heartless words, but now, she said, it cut off all his escape routes, and even more so, locked down all his escape routes. Not knowing what to think, Shangguan he suddenly strode forward. His eyes were dark, like a bottomless abyss, as if he wanted to suck Xian into the endless darkness. Why won't you consider me? Don't you know whose child Shong is? Before you slept with him, you and I had already. A slap suddenly landed on the man's face. Half of his face was burning with pain, and half of Shangguan his handsome face was slapped to one side. He looked at Xian with no hatred, but still sincere and affectionate. I know I have done a lot of wrong things. I was blinded by beauty and I betrayed my feelings for you. But you have to believe that the person I love most in my heart has always been you. At that time, I only married her because of the power of her family. In this world, which man doesn't want to climb to the highest position? Only by climbing to the highest position can I give you happiness. I originally thought that I could use the backing of her family to get what I want, so that I could marry you openly. How could it not be glorious to be the wife of the Prime Minister of a country? In this North Underworld, who doesn't envy you? But I didn't think. Speaking of the past, the man's deep and affectionate gaze gradually became regretful. I never thought that you would actually marry him, and marry so heartless. Even when I went to see you, you rejected me at the door and didn't want to see me. We clearly love each other so much. We shouldn't have ended up like this. Do you know that? Shangguan speaking of the past, do you know how hard it was for me to wait for you? How many years have I waited for you? I only have a few years to live. Is it 5 years or 10 years until you become the Prime Minister? Yes, I waited. What did you do when you were slowly gaining power? Even more beautiful concubines were brought into the mansion. Every day, with beauties in your arms, you recited poems and composed songs. You were happy and at ease. You said that you married that woman just to use her family's background to climb up. Then what's the meaning of you bringing those beauties into the residence without any background? Xian didn't know how ridiculous this was. He laughed in a low voice. What a pity. I waited for you in a daze. What did you do? I waited for you for years and years, but you still sent people to kill me. You misunderstood me. The person who was sent to kill you was not me, but isn't it all your tacit consent? If you want to chat with more like-minded people about exploding cute pet concubine, Regent, get into trouble, please follow Yudu Literature on WeChat. Chat about life and find confidants tilde. Chapter 896. Xian stared at him fiercely. You have long felt that I was an eyesore and that I didn't deserve to exist in this world, so you wanted to kill me. When I was with him, you were not reconciled. You couldn't stand the fact that the woman who loved you and only you fell in love with another man in the blink of an eye. Your self-esteem was playing tricks on you, so you thought of me. I often think that if I had married an ordinary man from an ordinary family, and his status and appearance were not as good as yours, I'm afraid that you would have ignored me a long time ago. You wouldn't even have looked at me with disdain. However, the man I married is the Emperor. Not only that, he dotes on me more than you do, loves me, and protects me. In this aspect, even you can't compare. So, you are not reconciled, are you? Not to mention him, even she herself did not expect that a lowly person like her would catch the eye of the Emperor of a country. She was heartbroken and did not want to accept another man, but that man was so gentle to her. For her, he would die for her, and even become the enemy of the world for her. In the past, she was immersed in Shangguan his gentleness and could not extricate herself. She thought that he was the one for her. But until she experienced his betrayal, she realized that the so-called true love and gentleness were nothing more than this. Beimingyu's appearance made her realize, what was the feeling of being loved and protected in the palm of someone's hand? Her cold heart had finally met him, and it began to slowly warm up. She had feelings for him again. So what? Shong is my child. You said it, you said you were pregnant with my child, you shut up. Xian roared. Shangguan he pursed his lips and really did not speak anymore. The first time she slept with him was after he became successful. He used flowery words to deceive her, but she believed him. She really thought that everything he did was for her. It wasn't until he touched her that he felt sick of her and allowed that woman to kill her. She had told him that she was pregnant with his child. Shangwon he. Xian's lips curled into a self-deprecating smile. He suddenly laughed. In your heart, have you always thought that Shong is your son? I've always wanted to confirm this with you. Ever since you got together with Beiming you didn't want to see me. He's the emperor, and I'm just a subject, so naturally I can't do anything to him. Xian was amused. I don't want to see you because I've fallen in love with Beiming. Don't you know that this man is good at everything except that he's too narrow-minded? You can't bear to see me having anything to do with another man, especially a man I used to like. Since you want to know whose child Shong is, then I'll tell you. Shong is the child of Beiming and I. Our only child. No, it's impossible, Shangwon. He took a few steps back in disbelief and looked at her in shock. No, it's impossible. He kept shaking his head. How is this possible? Xian, you're lying to me. You're lying to me, aren't you? Speaking of which, you just refuse to forgive me. You hate me. Because you hate me, so you don't want to admit it to me. You don't want to admit that Shong is our child. I know you must still be angry in your heart. You're angry that I treated you like that and betrayed you, so you. To chat with more like-minded people about exploding cute pet concubine, regent, get into trouble, chat about life and find a confidant Tilda. Chapter 897. Shangwon he, you're still as naive as before. You're so full of yourself, thinking that everything is under your control, including me. But have you forgotten that when a woman's heart is broken by you and her heart is dead, what will she do when she goes crazy? Shong is the child of me and Beiming. Why would I lie to you? Because there's no need to lie to you now. Do you know? As for why I lied to you back then, it was because I wanted to use you. I wanted you to remember that the future emperor is your son. I wanted you to be loyal to him and put him first in everything you do. After you passed away, we were alone and had no one to rely on. If I didn't give you this understanding, I believe that with your ambition, you would definitely lead troops to revolt. But when you had this understanding and thought that Shong was the child of you and me, he was your child no matter what. Even a vicious tiger would not eat its cubs. You would definitely serve him loyally. You would secretly help him get rid of all the officials who were not loyal to him. You don't know how much trouble you saved us. Speaking of this, Xian suddenly laughed. That child died long ago. It was when you coldly watched that bitch kill me that I fell off the cliff. I survived, but the child was gone. Shangwon he, why do you still want a child? Do you want me to bear a child for you? Let me tell you, you're not worthy. Originally, if he and she were just a subject and a master, discussing the matter of Shangwon Mai, she would be willing to give him an explanation. But when he entered the palace, his purpose was not for Shangwon Mai, but to rekindle their old relationship. Xian didn't know how disgusted he was. Shangwon he, speaking of which, you don't know how much that person in your family hates me, right? All this time, she wanted me to die. All this time, she has always been superior to me. She felt that I was not as good as she was, that I was not as good as she was. Even my man left me because of her. But now, I am the empress of a country. I am married to the emperor. My son is the emperor of the North Underworld. He controls everything in the North Underworld. Even her life and death are in my hands. Do you know that she is not reconciled to this? Do you know how unwilling she is? Right now, she clearly hates me to death, but she doesn't dare to offend me. She doesn't even dare to speak to me with that arrogant face of hers. Even when she sees me, she has to respectfully kneel on the ground, pay her respects to me, and respectfully call me Empress Dowager. If she were to find out that even the man she once snatched away is now begging for forgiveness and wants to rekindle our old relationship, do you think she would want to die? Xian, you should know that she has never existed in my heart. From the moment I married her, I only loved you. From the moment I married her, all I had for her was. Yes, she is not in your heart. What you saw was her backing, her beauty, and everything she could give you. So, you betrayed me and chose her. Shangwon he, you are not a gentleman. Why do you explain yourself so affectionately? You betrayed me and let a weak woman like me suffer the coldness of others. I was unmarried and pregnant. Even the child in my belly died because of your vicious father. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about exploding cute pet concubine, the Prince Regent, gets into trouble, we chat about life and find bosom friends Tilda. Chapter 898. The Emperor of the Dark North Kingdom had passed the throne to his own son. He only needed an opportunity to convince Beiming Shong and tell him that he was his biological father. This way, the Dark North Kingdom's kingdom would be changed to the Shangguan families, and become his. Even though he was ambitious, he also knew that Beiming Shong was his own flesh and blood. At his age, if it were someone else trying to rule the country and become the emperor, he would definitely fight to the death to take the throne and become the emperor himself. But the emperor was Beiming Shong, his biological son, so there was no need to fight for it. Not only would he not fight for it, he would also do his best to protect the mother and son. Now, hearing Xian's heartless words, Shangguan he looked at her bitterly and said, Xian, you are still the same as before, always unwilling to admit defeat. Things have come to this point, even if you admit that Shong is my son, what can you do? I won't do anything to you and your mother. On the contrary, I'll love you and your mother even more. I know you've always liked Huiru. As long as you admit that Shong is my son, I'll divorce her when I get back. From now on, I'll protect you and your mother. I won't let you and your mother be bullied or wronged. What do you say? Guards, Xian. Seeing that there was really a guard coming in, Shangguan his expression suddenly changed. He did not dare to lose his composure, and hurriedly came down from his high seat, respectfully standing below, looking at Xian. The emperor has punished concubine Mai with a rod, and Ari Jiao has already ordered the best doctor to diagnose her. I have also sent people to send a lot of tonics and precious jewelry, and I have already discussed it with the Prime Minister. Since it's like this, Ari Jiao is tired, and my beloved minister, please return. In front of everyone, what could Shangguan he say? He could only unwillingly bow and respectfully say, Yes, Empress Dowager. Empress Dowager, please take care of yourself. After that, he left. Before leaving, he looked back at her. The woman was very decisive, and did not even bother to look at him. After he left, Nanny Zhu came in, and when she came in, she even met him face to face. From her angle, she could clearly see the palm mark on half of Shangguan his handsome face. Nanny Zhu was surprised. Hadn't the Empress Dowager already had no feelings for him? Why did he hit her so angrily? One could imagine how furious the Empress Dowager was just by looking at the unerasable handprint on her face. Her eyes did not stay on Shangguan he for long. Worried about Xian, she quickly walked into the inner hall. Xian still maintained his previous posture, standing there, his body trembling. When Nanny Zhu saw her, her heart ached so much that she couldn't breathe. She went forward and held her in her arms. Just like before, Nanny Zhu was like an elder sister, comforting the weak and helpless Nanny Zhu. Empress Dowager, if you want to cry, just cry. You'll be fine after you let it out. And me, I'll always be here. Why did I fall in love with such a sanctimonious hypocrite? For him, I was willing to give up everything. For him, I even gave up my chastity. He was just deceiving me with a few words, but I still believed him. Granny Zhu, the only thing I regret now is that I didn't give my chastity to Ru. For my sake, he has always been chaste. I don't know how much he has sacrificed, but she had always been obsessed with this man, and she didn't know how many times she had hurt his heart. Read the latest chapter of Exploding Cute Pet Concubine, The Prince Regent, Messing with Clawbook House for free. Chapter 899. Why do evil people have such long lives? Why do they have to disgust me? Can't we just live our own lives? Granny Zhu, after so many years, I still don't know how to face him. Although I hate him, I don't have him in my heart, but I don't dare to face him. If Ru is still alive, he can always stand in front of me and help me deal with everything. He can make him speechless, he can make him feel so ashamed that he can't vent his anger. You can make him seethe with anger. Shangguan he could only hate in her heart, but she couldn't do anything on the surface. But you was already dead, and the only ones alive were Shangguan he and that disgusting woman, Empress Dowager. Now that the emperor is an adult, he can face everything well. You don't have to give Shangguan he that impression for the emperor. This servant knows that in your heart, you must hate him to the core. Hate. She didn't just hate him, she even wanted to kill him. Especially Shangguan Mai. Shangguan Mai's temperament and appearance were very similar to her mother's, and she was her enemy. Logically speaking, such an obedient and cultured woman should be the best candidate for the North Sea Empress. But she hated her, hated everything about the Shangguan family. Even when she came to greet her every day, she was rejected at the door. Because she hated her, she didn't want to see her. She was afraid that if she saw her, especially the face that looked similar to her mother's, she would feel disgusted and want to kill her. She waved her hand. Forget it. If I really hate him, I don't know how many years I will hate him. Although I hate him, I have seen his loyalty to Shonga all these years. The reason I am willing to tolerate him is because he has sacrificed a lot for Shonga and the Dark North Kingdom. Just Pang Shan alone is far from enough. She didn't want to do anything to him now, but the North Sea Empire needed people. If she touched him now, what would the officials and people of the North Sea Empire think? She wasn't young anymore. She could do whatever she wanted and do whatever she wanted. Every move she made, every step she took, she had to think about Dark North and her son. Nanny Zhu didn't know how many times she had seen her. The grievances and hatred in her heart would always subside in a short period of time, and then she would swallow them down. She knew the Empress Dowager's grievances and knew what she had done for Dark North all these years. For the sake of the country, for the sake of the late emperor, he could lower his hatred and anger to such a low level that it was not even worth mentioning. Empress Dowager, since Shangguan he is not here for concubine Mai, then this matter is easy to handle. The things that you asked this servant to do just now, this servant has completed them. I also took the opportunity to go to Charming Palace. Although Shangguan Mai's complexion is not very good, she did not lose her life because of this. She should be fine after a few days of rest. Moreover, this was a good thing for Shen young lady. She was bedridden and unable to incite the imperial consort to do anything to Shen young lady. You can't play those little tricks behind my back. Nanny Zhu, compared to me, you still don't know Huiru's character as well as I do. Her daughter is carved from the same mold as her. I can only say that Huiru's character and scheming are even better than her mother's. Do you think that just because she is bedridden, she can't play these little tricks behind the back? Read the latest chapter of Exploding Cute Pet Concubine, The Prince Regent, Provoking Clawbook House for free. Chapter 900. Cian sneered, let me tell you, the more sick she is in bed, the more she can play these little tricks. In this way, no one will suspect her. Tell me, how smart is this girl? Compared to her mother, she's not the slightest bit inferior. In the past, she couldn't win, but it didn't mean that she couldn't win now. Cian closed his eyes. I'm tired. I want to have a good rest during this time. The Lantern Festival will start tomorrow. Accompany me out of the palace to watch the Lantern Festival. On the computer, yes. The Lantern Festival in the North Underworld was the liveliest every year. No matter when it was, the Empress Dowager would go to the Lantern Festival in person. Because there were many memories of her when she was young. Seeing that she was really tired, Nanny Zhu bowed respectfully, Empress Dowager, please have a good rest. I will go outside to guard you. At this moment, in Charming Palace. Don't worry, Your Highness. I believe that the Prime Minister will seek justice for you. Yue covered Shangguan Mai with a brocade quilt. This was the first time she saw the Empress Dowager in such a weak state. Her face was pale and bloodless. She lay on the bed, unable to move. First published on the new August Chinese website, her clothes were thin, and the wounds on her back were even more unsightly. The imperial physician had just prescribed her medicine, and she had carefully applied it on the Empress Dowager. Although the Empress Dowager had gritted her teeth, she had been strong and didn't complain about the pain. But she knew that even the soldiers who led the troops in battle couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air when their skin and flesh were split open. The Empress was just an ordinary woman, yet she endured the pain to this extent and didn't say a word. Yu'er's eyes were red. "Your Highness, how could the Emperor be so heartless to treat you so cruelly for a foreign slut?" In fact, Yu'er was also flogged, but the eunuch who hit her was her old lover, so he put something on her back. The Emperor's main target of punishment was Shangguan Mai. She was only a female servant and was not worthy of those people's attention. So, when the 50 strokes of the flogging fell, she only pretended to be unconscious. When she came back, other than some pain, she did not feel anything else. Shangguan Mai had long known that she had affairs with many eunuchs in the harem, but she still protected her. He also knew that he was the master. If the punishment was too light, it would be noticed. Therefore, he didn't have any reason to be angry at Yu'er. Fortunately, she was not injured. Otherwise, no one would be as considerate as she was in taking care of herself. However, what she wanted to mention now was not the Emperor, but Shangguan He. When he heard her say that Shangguan He would definitely seek justice for him, he couldn't help but laugh. She suddenly smiled. "I don't think he came to the palace for me, but for that old woman in Xi'an Palace. Empress Dowager." Shangguan Mai closed her eyes tiredly. Who has he truly loved? During those years in the Prime Minister's residence, the one who truly loved and spoiled her was her mother. What did that have to do with him? Although he would occasionally pull her aside to talk to her and kiss her face affectionately when he came back from court, she knew that behind this gentleness and love, there were no feelings at all. In fact, there was even disgust and impatience. Even when he spoke gently to his mother thought that this gentleness was only present when he was with her. Little did she know that this wasn't gentleness. Behind that gentleness, there was indifference, impatience, and even more, disgust. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about explosively cute favorite concubine, the Prince Regent, gets into trouble, follow Yudu literature. Chapter 901. There was also a faint killing intent. Unfortunately, her mother couldn't see it. She was immersed in his gentleness and care all day long. How could she see it? In fact, this man and she were not of the same mind at all. She didn't know when they were not of the same mind, or had never been of the same mind. She didn't care. She only knew that now that she had entered the palace and become the Emperor's woman, her eyes should revolve around the Emperor. After all, he was her future support. She tried to show a tactful, generous and understanding appearance, because she wanted to be the Empress, the motherly model of the world. Before Shen Yueji appeared, she had never taken Pang Yuan seriously. In the eyes of outsiders, Pang Yuan's family had a strong background, and her father was the imperial tutor of the country. In addition, the Empress Dowager treated her as her own daughter, and so did the Emperor. No matter what she did, the Empress Dowager and the Emperor would turn a blind eye and not ask about it. But only she knew that when others envied Pang Yuan and wanted to be like her, only he didn't take her seriously. Only she secretly laughed at Pang Yuan, who had such a good identity and background. She didn't know how to make use of it, but always courted death. First, domain name. Please remember, as long as she wanted, she could pull her down from the high position in a short period of time. While she was busy punishing the beauties in the harem, she secretly saved them and won their hearts. She thought that everything was within her expectations. She thought that Pang Yuan would court death sooner or later, but who would have thought that this Shen Yueji would have popped out from somewhere? The Emperor was good to her, doted on her, and indulged her. Pang Yuan couldn't compare. Even if there were 10, 100, 1,000, or even 10,000 Pang Yuans, they couldn't compare to Shen Yueji. At that moment, she really realized that something was wrong, but she didn't panic completely. Shen Yueji's appearance was a challenge to her. After all, she didn't even care about Pang Yuan, let alone Shen Yueji. New August Chinese Network Wu.com. Shi was good at observing people's minds. No matter what this woman looked like, no matter what she thought. But as long as she saw it, she would know. What was this woman thinking? But Shen Yueji, she found that she couldn't see through her. This woman was really unfathomable. She had tried to put her mind on her, but this woman gave her the feeling of a gust of wind, an invisible wind blowing in front of her. She could only feel her existence, but couldn't touch her. She could only use Pang Yuan, that idiot, to test her. She wanted to see how she would react when faced with Pang Yuan's provocation and pressure. He was fearless even when facing Pang Yuan. One must know that in the imperial harem, which woman in the imperial harem wasn't afraid of Pang Yuan? Afraid of Pang Yuan? Pang Yuan's existence in the harem was like a devil, and the Empress Dowager and the Emperor were the ones who took the side of the tyrant. No one dared to offend her. It was because offending her would only result in death. There was no way out. Even though she looked down on Pang Yuan and looked down on her, she was at least afraid of her. At least she knew that the backing of her mother's family made it impossible for her to face her directly. Because in this way, no matter whether she was right or wrong, Pang Yuan would always be wrong and never right. If she wanted to chat with more like-minded people about super cute pet concubine, regent, get into trouble, follow Yudu literature on WeChat. Talk about life and find confidants tilde. Chapter 902. Not only was it not good for her to confront Pang Yuan, but even the Empress Dowager, the Emperor, and Imperial Tutor Pang would not spare her and the Shangguan family. She could ignore the life and death of the Shangguan family, but her mother really cared for her. She couldn't ignore her mother's life. First published on the Beiyee Chinese website.com. Shen Yueji, she murmured this person's name in her heart. Even though she was afraid of Pang Yuan, she wasn't this afraid. Shen Yueji was the only one who made her feel fear. She thought she was just telling the truth. So what if the Emperor heard it? But the Emperor was going to execute her because of her. In the past, her ladyship had always had everything firmly in the palm of her hand. Yue had never seen her so helpless before. Right now, she gave off the feeling that she was like a breeze that could not withstand a single blow. Then, Your Highness, what should we do? Why is your charming palace in such dire straits? There isn't even a servant outside to report. A dissatisfied voice came from outside. Shangguan Mai stopped what she was about to say and looked at Pang Yuan, who had just entered. Pang Yuan walked into the inner hall. When she saw the pale and helpless Shangguan Mai lying on the bed, she probably didn't expect her to be so badly injured. No wonder the Empress Dowager's personal doctor was summoned here. How is her injury? Is she dead? Your Highness, my concubine is injured like this. It's fine if you don't feel sorry for her, but you're still making sarcastic remarks. Yue didn't have a good temper when she saw Pang Yuan. She got up from the bed and glared at her fiercely. Pang Yuan didn't get angry. Instead, she looked her up and down. Didn't you say that your maidservant was also beaten 50 times? How is it that compared to you, he is still alive and kicking here? Sister concubine, Shangguan Mai's face darkened. Yue had almost forgotten about this because of her momentary loss of composure. She couldn't even find the words to refute. Pang Yuan sneered. She saw through it but didn't point it out. I thought you were smart, but in the end, didn't you end up the same as me, suffering a loss at Shen Yueji's hands? At the very least, this empress is much stronger than you. At the very least, this empress didn't end up being bedridden for a month and a half. Originals, domain names, please remember at this point, she sighed. Now, both of us have suffered at the hands of that nameless little slut. You're injured to this extent. It seems like you can't help me. Imperial sister, Shangguan Mai raised her head with difficulty and looked at her. Previously, I underestimated Shen Yueji's weight in the Emperor's heart. Through today's test, I know that in the Emperor's heart, Shen Yueji has long become one with the Emperor. Bah! Pang Yuan scolded angrily. The most disgusting thing in her life was to hear from other people about which woman the Emperor doted on. Now, she heard from Shangguan Mai that the Emperor had become one with her. Even if they were to become one, it was the Emperor who had become one with her, not with that slut. Shangguanmai knew that if she said anything about how much Shen Yueji was doted on by the emperor in front of her, she would turn hostile. However, she was not afraid at all. On the contrary, she deliberately provoked her. Sister, I know that in this imperial harem, no one likes the emperor as much as you do. Even I am ashamed of my inferiority. If she wanted to chat with more like-minded people about explosively cute favorite concubine, the Prince Regent, gets into trouble, follow Yudu literature. Chapter 903. That's why I gave up a long time ago. The only thing I feel sorry for is that Shen Yueji stole your sweetheart. You should know that the emperor should have belonged to you. If it weren't for Shen Yueji, the emperor would have conferred you the title of empress long ago. Shangguanmai, what's the point of saying this now? This consort didn't come here to listen to your flattering word. I asked you to come up with a plan. Aren't you always full of ideas and cunning? Then tell me, how can we get rid of Shen Yueji? Or, she narrowed her eyes dangerously. Are you afraid? Is it because you suffered at Shen Yueji's hands that you're afraid? Shangguanmai gestured for the servants in the bedroom to leave. In the blink of an eye, only she and Pang Yuan were left. Imperial Consort Pang, I've just realized that when facing Shen Yueji, if I want to do something, I have to do it. If I don't, I have to do nothing. What do you mean? His Majesty dotes on her so much that he didn't even care about my Shangguan family's power. For that woman, he executed me. Presumably, with your Pang family's power, the Majesty did the same for that woman. Nonsense. Sister, be realistic. Haven't you seen what I've been through? Even if you don't want to admit it, the Emperor only has Shen Yueji in his heart. This is a fact. For Shen Yueji, he didn't even fear our family's power. Tell me, how can we deal with him? Hearing this, Pang Yuan became even angrier. Her beautiful face became distorted. What should we do? Don't tell me you really want me to hand over the emperor to that bitch. Pang Yuan clenched her fists under her long sleeves. She couldn't do it. She couldn't do it at all. She couldn't do it. The emperor, whom she had loved for so many years, was taken away by another woman. She couldn't do it. The emperor, who was supposed to be with her for the rest of his life, had waited for him for so many years without complaint or regret, but he had fallen in love with another woman and refused to look at her. Finally, she could not hold it in any longer. She quickly walked forward and picked Shangguanmai up from the bed. Shangguanmai's back was still injured. As Pang Yuan lifted her up without a care, she almost died from the pain on the spot. Perhaps it was because her originally pale face became even paler after her movement, as if she was really going to die. For the time being, Pang Yuan didn't want her to die. She still had a use for her, so she let go. Shangguanmai fell onto the bed, her wound touching the edge of the bed. After enduring for so long, she couldn't hold it in any longer. She sucked in a breath of cold air and said, "Sister Imperial Concubine, I know you're unhappy with me, but I'm injured now. If you do this, you'll kill me. Mph, who asked you to go to Xingyang Palace for no reason?" At the mention of this, Pang Yuan suddenly narrowed her eyes. By the way, why did you suddenly go to Xingyang Palace when you were fine? Shangguanmai, or could it be that you're busy with me for something? Shangguanmai's dark eyes flickered. She suddenly smiled. Sister, what are you talking about? Why would I hide anything from you? It's just that I've never had a direct confrontation with Shen Yueji. I can only understand her from sister's mouth. I don't really understand her. Now that sister and I are working together, we must have more contact with her. Otherwise, if we don't understand her, how can we control everything in our hands? Read the latest chapter of Exploding Cute Pet Concubine, The Prince Regent, Messing with Clawbook House for free. Chapter 904. Pang Yuan's expression softened a little, probably because she felt that what she said made sense. I've already told you that that slut is harder to provoke than any of the women this consort has encountered before. You went to look for her without any sense of propriety. Isn't that clearly courting death? You really can't blame anyone for falling into such a state today. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for acting recklessly. After saying that, Pang Yuan looked at her with disappointment in her eyes. Sure enough, she still had too much hope for this woman. She really thought that Shangguan Mai was a shrewd person. With her help, she could easily get rid of Shen Yueji. In this way, there would be someone to take the blame for her. Why not? When she said that she wanted to cooperate with him, he had already wanted to agree. The fastest network update mobile M.com. But now, after seeing the suffering she had suffered at Shen Yueji's hands, Pang Yuan finally got over it. She really had high hopes for this woman. Don't be angry, Imperial concubine Jie. I do have a way to get rid of Shen Yueji and make it impossible for her to make a comeback in this lifetime. Even the Emperor will leave her forever. I just don't know if you dare to do it. To Pang Yuan, these words were undoubtedly good news. She narrowed her eyes and looked at Shangguan Mai expectantly. Do you really have such a good idea? Since you have it, why didn't you say it earlier? Do you have to drag it out until now? Shangguan Mai took a deep breath with difficulty. Sister, you may not know this, but I have no enmity with Shen Yueji. Unless it's the last resort, I will never put her to death. Moreover, this matter is very risky, and it concerns the Empress Dowager. In the eyes of Sister, Imperial concubine, Empress Dowager has always been an elder, and the Empress Dowager also treats Sister as her own daughter. Don't mention that old thing to me. At the mention of Cin, Pang Yuan's anger flared up. She did treat Cin as her elder and her biological mother, but how did she treat herself? At the mention of her, she gritted her teeth in hatred and quickly interrupted Shangguan Mai's words. What you said just now was about the Empress Dowager. Tell me about it. Shangguan Mai hesitated for a moment. Sister, this is really risky. Once people find out, I'm afraid we won't be able to keep our lives. Thinking that she had the immortal gold medallion, Pang Yuan suddenly smiled. What are you afraid of? I naturally have a way out. As for whether Shangguan Mai lived or died, that was her own business. Right now, she just wanted to drag Shen Yueji down from the stage as soon as possible. As long as she could die, she was willing to do anything. Even if it was to take a risk and have a slim chance of survival, as long as she could drag Shen Yueji down with her, she would not hesitate at all. A glint flashed across Shangguan Mai's eyes and she suddenly smiled. This matter concerns the safety of the Empress Dowager. Are you willing to do it? This consort is worried about Empress Dowager's safety, but has Empress Dowager ever been worried about this consort? In the eyes of the Empress Dowager, she has long been deceived by that little vixen and has never cared about me. Since she can be so heartless to the point that she doesn't care about my feelings, why should I care about her? Shangguan Mai, what are you planning? Let me ask you, will Brother Emperor know that I'm the one who did this? Shangguan Mai shook her head. No, this matter is foolproof. Sister Imperial concubine, don't worry. Moreover, this is the only way to get rid of Shen Yueji. It depends on whether you dare to take this risk and make this bet. Say it. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about exploding cute favorite concubine, the Prince Regent, gets into trouble, follow Yudu literature. Chapter 905. Sister, come to me. Pang Yuan glanced at her and bent down in front of her. Sister, let's do this. Hearing Shangguan Mai whisper these words into her ear, Pang Yuan was shocked and in disbelief at the beginning, but when she saw Shangguan Mai's smile, this woman seemed to be born with a kind of magic. Not to mention men, even she, as a woman, was almost dazzled by her captivating smile. But, was it really okay to do this? Although the Empress Dowager had always been partial to Shen Yueji, the outsider, in some of her actions and practices, at least the Empress Dowager truly loved her. Although her love for her had been transferred to Shen Yueji after Shen Yueji appeared, she was still someone who had loved her for so many years. In her heart, she truly regarded her as an elder. Sister, I'm just asking for your opinion on this method. As for whether you're willing to use this opportunity to get rid of Shen Yueji, it's still up to you. If you're not willing, Pang Yuan suddenly shouted angrily. Shangguan Mai was so frightened that her body stiffened. She hurriedly shut her mouth and did not dare to lift her head to look at her. Elder sister, I am doing this for your sake. I know that in this world, no one is more important than the emperor in elder sister's heart. As long as Shen Yueji is not eliminated, the emperor's thoughts will never fall on you. Elder sister, you know that as long as Shen Yueji is in the back palace, the emperor's thoughts will always fall on her. Through today's contest, younger sister has already realized how important Shen Yueji is to His Majesty. For her, His Majesty is not even afraid of my Shangguan family's power. My life and death are all in Shen Yueji's hands. Shangguan Mai's words were like a thorn in Pang Yuan's heart. Even if she did not want to admit it, she had to learn to accept reality. She suddenly closed her eyes, turned around and smashed the things on the coffee table. The sound of the smashing made Yu, who was outside, afraid and worried. This woman was crazy and did not care about anything. Would she do anything to the concubine? She was so worried that she wanted to rush in. But before she could rush in, her arm was grabbed by Xiao from behind. What are you worried about? Your Nyang Nyang is injured to that extent and is already half dead. My family's Guifei Nyang Nyang is too lazy to hurt her own hand. Looking at this maidservant's tone, she was clearly the same as her master. Like master, like lowly servant. Yu flung her hand away angrily. Don't touch me. Xiao snorted indifferently. You think I'm too lazy to touch you? Let me tell you, according to my empress's temper, if you rush in now, won't you just anger her even more? If she's angry, she'll kill you. I'm just pulling you back out of goodwill and not sending you to your death. Her ladyship is inside. Is your life more important, or your ladyship's? Chapter 906. Not long after, she saw Pang Yuan coming out of the room with a smile on her face. She didn't have time to bow and rushed in. Seeing that Shangguan Mai's face was much paler than before, Yu felt sorry for her and quickly helped her to lie down. Your Highness, are you all right? I was so worried. Did Imperial Consort Pang do anything to you? She picked me up from the bed just now and almost killed me. Is she gone now? Yes, she's gone. Yu quickly nodded. Don't worry, Your Highness. That vicious woman has left. Your Highness, what did you say to Imperial Consort Pang? Just now, this servant heard some movements inside and thought that Imperial Consort Pang was bullying you again. I wanted to rush in, but her servant girl held my hand and didn't let this servant enter. Shangguan Mai waved her hand at her. Fortunately, you didn't come in. Otherwise, according to Pang Yuan's character, you would be in serious trouble. I didn't say anything. In short, Pang Yuan's attention should not be on me during this period. You and I should rest in Charming Palace and watch the tigers fight. Yu saw that Her Highness's face had regained its victorious expression and couldn't help but feel happy. Yes, Your Highness. I will listen to you. 2 days later. 2 days passed peacefully. It was said that today was the busiest annual lantern festival in the capital. Shen Yueji had just learned that the Empress Dowager would also go to see the lanterns. Shen Yueji was shocked when she received the news from Compassionate Palace that she was invited to go with them. Because before that, she knew that other than Shangguan Mai, who had just been flogged, Pang Yuan was also going to the lantern festival with the Empress Dowager. But the Empress Dowager didn't invite her. Because of the fox fur sable incident, even if the rumor about this incident was destroyed because of Consort Mai, who had been flogged 50 times by the emperor. There was also the Empress Dowager's silent response to prove her innocence. If the Empress Dowager had really hit her one day, she wouldn't have asked Pang Yuan to come along at the Lantern Festival, leaving Pang Yuan hanging. Her attitude was clearly to prove to outsiders that the rumors in the harem these past 2 days were false. However, they didn't dare to talk about Pang Yuan. If she found out about it, they wouldn't be able to keep their lives. Even their families would suffer. So, the most angry one was Pang Yuan of the Pure Young Palace. She had originally planned to bury the hatchet with the Empress Dowager. This time, she would apologize to the Empress Dowager first. After all, she was indeed in the wrong in that matter. It was also her who had angered the Empress Dowager. However, in the end, the bad reputation that had fallen on Shen Yueji's head had actually fallen on her head in less than 2 days. How could she not be angry? Especially when she thought of those bitches who were hiding in her bedroom and secretly mocking her, she felt even angrier. Right now, they were probably overjoyed. Your Highness, don't be angry. Xiao was a little scared as she poured a glass of water and handed it to her. Pang Yuan was so angry that she gnashed her teeth. Not angry? How could she not be angry? She was obviously angry to death. At first, she was a little hesitant. She thought that this old thing had loved and taken care of her for so many years. In the end, it turned out that she was treated like this. She really thought that she could protect her to the end. She didn't know if her father would be angry after knowing about this. Read the latest chapter of Exploding Cute Pet Concubine, The Regent, Provoking the Body Claw book house for free. Chapter 907. She hadn't received a letter from her father for 2 days. She hadn't even seen her father enter the Pure Young Palace. She didn't get angry at Xiao this time, which was really out of Xiao's expectation. Old thing, you asked for it. Since that's the case, don't blame me for not considering the old relationship. Originally, Shen Yueji was supposed to go with Mo Wushang. But because of Empress Dowager, she knew that the man was unhappy. She comforted him softly. Empress Dowager is my mother-in-law in the future. I haven't married you yet. Do you want me to disobey your mother? Then there was his mother. She clearly knew that he was able to put aside all his official duties today for Jie, but in the end, she had forcibly separated the two of them. The man narrowed his eyes dangerously and didn't say anything. His cold face revealed his strong dissatisfaction. Shen Yueji leaned over and kissed his handsome face. Only then did she see that the man's expression eased a little. Well, I'll go to Xi'an Palace first. It's not like I can't meet her at the Lantern Festival. Miss Shen, Imperial Concubine Pang will also go to this Lantern Festival. Some concubines who are favored by Empress Dowager will also go to this Lantern Festival. Imperial Concubine Pang has endless means. Miss Shen doesn't have the protection of His Majesty. You should be more careful. Eunuch Liu reminded her carefully. Shen Yueji smiled slightly. Thank you, Eunuch Liu. I know. Xi'an Palace. This woman from Foam Country is too arrogant. Empress Dowager has been waiting for nearly an hour. Yes, she doesn't know who Empress Dowager is. What's her status? How can she make Empress Dowager wait for so long? Outside of Xi'an's palace, there were already many concubines standing guard. The sun was blazing. Today's sun was much hotter than usual, and it was very glaring. They had been standing outside for nearly an hour. Their legs were already numb. When did they stand for so long? Almost all the concubines who went to the Lantern Festival had arrived. Only Shen Yueji was missing. Isn't it because she is favored now? Not to mention an hour, even if it's 2 hours, Empress Dowager doesn't say anything, we have to wait obediently. In the crowd, some people began to mock her. After her sarcasm, the rest of the people were even more indignant. New Bei Chinese website. Speaking of being arrogant, even Imperial Consort Pang's paternal family, who had such a powerful backing, did not see her act so presumptuously. Knowing that the Empress Dowager was angry with her, she still ran in to please the Empress Dowager. Because the status of the Imperial concubine was there, and they were just unfavored concubines in the harem. Usually, they had to curry favor with the Empress Dowager, so they had a good relationship with her. Maybe the Empress Dowager also felt that she owed them. They were sent to the palace at such a young age. Chapter 908. That's right, it's just a pity for Imperial Concubine Mai. She's such a kind and magnanimous person, but because she stirred up trouble in the Emperor's ears, she was beaten. They didn't care what happened to Pang Yuan. Even if Pang Yuan died, they might applaud her behind her back. Among the concubines present, who hadn't suffered in Pang Yuan's hands? But Shangwon Mai was different. Since they entered the palace, Shangwon Mai had taken good care of them. After hearing that Shangwon Mai was punished by the emperor because of Shin Yueji, they hated Shin Yueji even more out of jealousy, heartache, or other reasons. Sisters, when the woman from the Foam Kingdom comes, should we? Before the older concubine could finish her words, the woman behind her said hesitantly, Sister Hui Fei, I don't think that's a good idea. Yes, Sister Hui Fei. Everyone knows that Sister Concubine Mai was punished by the emperor because she offended Shin Yueji. If we treat Shin Yueji at this time, what are you afraid of? I just want you to ignore her. She's alone and helpless in the harem. How can she be so arrogant? Besides, the emperor is not by her side. She can't complain to the emperor, can she? Sisters, how can the woman from the Foam Kingdom be inferior to the woman from the North Underworld? You should know how Sister Concubine Mai was punished. Wasn't it because of Shin Yueji? What do you have to worry about? We're just ignoring her. There are so many faces here. Even if she really goes to complain to the emperor, how many of them do you think she can recognize? I'm afraid that the emperor will think that she's unreasonable. She could be willful and arrogant if she was pampered for a while. But if she did it too many times, she believed that even the emperor would get impatient with her. Perhaps it was because what she said made sense that the concubines present had already begun to agree with her. Sister Hui Fei is really knowledgeable. Yes, we'll listen to her. When the woman from the Foam Kingdom comes, we'll unite and ignore her. Humph, let's see how arrogant she can be. In the carriage, Shin Yueji sneezed inexplicably. When Shuangshi heard this, he quickly took the cloak and wanted to put it on her. Shin Yueji's face darkened. She reached out to stop her. Double happiness, it's a scorching sun. Everyone is about to be burnt to death by the sun. You still want to put clothes on me? Do you want me to die of heat? Double happiness was depressed. But miss, you just sneezed. You must have caught a cold. Shin Yueji was speechless. What kind of logic was that? Sighing, Shin Yueji shook her head and said, I heard that in addition to Pang Yuan, there are many other concubines in the harem who will be attending the Lantern Festival. www.com. Miss, are you worried? I'm not worried, but they will definitely team up to deal with me together. Pang Yuan and Shangwon Mai's affair has just been exposed. Even if they have that idea, they don't have the guts. Young master is on your side. First, domain name. Please remember there are so many people, but I don't know any of them. There's only the Empress Dowager. At that time, Pang Yuan will definitely pester the Empress Dowager to stop her from talking to me. And the other women in the harem will probably unite to talk about their own business in order to give me the cold shoulder. They won't care about me at all. They want to embarrass me. If you want to chat with more like-minded people about super cute favorite concubine, Prince Regent, get into trouble, follow You Read Literature on WeChat. Talk about life and find a bosom friend Tilda. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.